Thank you so much. So excited to be here. Welcome to User Research Demystified, what it looks like behind the curtain. So thank you for that excellent introduction, Darren. I'm going to go ahead and skip my background. I didn't realize that you were going to do that, so I appreciate it. Okay, everybody ready? If you're ready, if you can give me a quick thumbs up in the Q&A, that would be awesome. Let me know you're here, you're paying attention. It makes it easier and more exciting for me to present. Shailene, awesome. Luciano, Kia, great, awesome. The more interactive, the better. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, great. So actually, Randy, if I can ask for your help here, or Darren, if you could copy and paste this URL into the Q&A, that would be great. These are the resources for this session, and we're going to be referring to them. So I can't toggle back and forth between screen sharing and the Q&A, but it would be really helpful if someone could do that. So looking at resources from tinyurl.com/concentric 2021. Okay, awesome. So quickly, if you guys could just put one motivation in that Q&A so I can understand why you're here today, right? What inspired you to join this class or join this session? Okay, and then that'd be great. I always love to understand my audience so then I can clarify what is bringing you here today and then maybe spend a little bit more time on that topic. Okay, it looks like people may be using the chat and the Q&A. Not sure, let me toggle back because what happens is that the Q&A doesn't scroll. Okay. All right, well, let's keep going here. So today's agenda, we're going to talk first about what goes into choosing the right user research methods, and then the importance of learning our lingo. Our terminology is really, really key. Then we're going to talk about user research methods in action, and I'm going to show you what they actually look like. Then we're going to do some quick analysis and synthesis activities, and I'm going to share with you a bunch of resources that I have aggregated for this conference, some downloads and some discount codes. And again, you can download those resources with the URL tinyurl.com/concentric. So without further ado,
Michelle, I posted it in the chat. We've only got one response to that question, and it was in the chat. There weren't any responses to that question in the Q&A, but I did post the link into the chat, and Randy also posted in the Q&A, so we hit it from both sides.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So let's talk about user research methods in action. I get this question a lot. How do I choose which method to use? And I hate to answer a question with a question, but it really is dependent on quite a few things. One of the first things I want to know is, where are you in the process? Are you at the very beginning stages of the process where you're generating a better understanding of the problem space and the pain points and the people that you're designing for? Or does something exist already? Is this already maybe in a prototype form or a storyboard, or has it already launched in the process? Therefore, that would be a more evaluative type of study. So where are you in the process is one of the first things that I want to learn. Second, I want to understand why you're doing this research, right? What are you hoping to accomplish? Are you hoping to learn about attitudes? Are you hoping to learn about behaviors? Are you hoping to learn about both? What you are looking to learn will also inform which methods and approaches you use. And also, what level of confidence are you looking for? Are we looking for just a smoke signal, or are we looking for a very, very high confidence interval? In addition, I would ask, how much time do you have? How much time do we have to make this decision? Do we have 3 hours? Do we have 3 days? Do we have 3 weeks? Or do we have 3 months? Okay, so those are the 4 things that I'm going to look for in order to evaluate which is the best method to use. So again, where are you in the process? What are you looking to learn? How confident do we want to be? And how much time or how much time do we have to come up with this to collect these learnings, right? So whether it's generative or evaluative, this will determine, is determined primarily with where you are in the product development or service development process. What you're looking to learn, that will determine whether it's more qualitative research or quantitative research. If we're looking to learn why, then it's probably more qualitative. If we're looking to learn what, then it's probably more quantitative. And also attitudes and behaviors, right? Are we looking to understand what people say, or are we looking to understand what people do? All of these will inform what we test and when we test it, and which methods would be most appropriate. So an example of generative research might be a question along the lines of, what should we build? So they might have a very specific idea that the team is well suited to solve, or they might have understood that there's a new opportunity that they would like to explore. So they're coming to me with a question that's along the lines of, we have this understanding, we think we're well suited to provide a solution for it, but what should we build? Right? So that would be like a great example of a generative question. And of course, that's not a real research question yet. We'd have to tease that out, but in sort of to encapsulate it. And then an evaluative question might be, are we building the right thing? So an evaluative question is something that takes shape when you have something to evaluate, when you have something for someone to look at. Are we building the right thing is a great evaluative question. Maybe you're not super confident. Maybe you're not getting the reaction that you had anticipated. Maybe you're not getting the conversions and so forth. On the flip side of that, are we building the thing right? Is also a great evaluative question. Very big difference between, are we building the right thing and are we building the thing right? An example of qualitative research would help us understand why something is happening or why people feel this way, right? What is underlying that reason, right? Or that behavior. Quantitative will focus more on the behaviors and what is happening, right? Quantitative research can tell us where someone might have dropped off in the flow, but it can't tell us why. Why would be answered with qualitative research. So we often use both of them, both qualitative and quantitative. And this is what the term mixed methods refers to, is both qualitative and quantitative research to help us understand both sides and increase our confidence level. So imagine we're doing a study for a food delivery service. Are we looking to understand the attitudes, or are we looking to understand the behaviors? An attitudinal response might be, I really hate going to the grocery store. Behavioral response might be, I go to the grocery store 3 times a week. Okay, start to see the difference here. So what are we looking to learn, and how will the learnings be applied is really, really important. Here's a landscape of user research methods. And what you'll see here is an XY axis, right through the center, up and down, and through the center, left to right. The methods that are listed on the top of this chart are primarily behavioral questions. The methods that are listed on the bottom of this chart are primarily attitudinal questions. Where you see the arrows going left or right, like card sorting, that means it could either be qualitative, which is on the left-hand side, or quantitative, which is on the right-hand side. So depending on your visibility into this XY axis, this is a great tool to understand and help you evaluate which methods might be appropriate and which methods might not be, according to what are you looking to learn. Are you looking to learn about behaviors? Are you looking to learn about attitudes, or both, right? And then we're looking to gather feedback qualitatively, or we're looking to gather feedback quantitatively. And again, a lot of these things will be informed by the level of confidence you're looking for and the amount of time, also where you are in the process. Okay, I'm gonna pause there and get a quick drink of water. Feel free to throw some questions or any sort of ahas into the Q&A, and that will easily spur our Q&A and dialogue as we progress. And now I'd like to talk about the correct terminology and why it really, really matters. So first, I can tell immediately how savvy you are by the terms you use in conversation with me, in your portfolio, in your LinkedIn profile, etc. The way you use the research and UX terms is a dead giveaway to me about your UX maturity. So please learn the lingo, all right? There's a very big difference between usability testing, user testing, and usertesting.com. For example, usability testing evaluates products that exist in a form that can at least be evaluated, okay? A usability test is primarily focused is to understand the ease of use and the related opportunities. Usability tests can be moderated or unmoderated. They can be conducted on a platform, or they can be conducted remotely. They can be conducted in a lab. They can be conducted online. They can be conducted in person. Britt, the primary goal here is to understand how usable it is. Maybe we're digging into findability. Maybe we're digging into learnability. Maybe we're digging into comprehension or other heuristics. That's usability testing. It is an evaluative approach that can include both qualitative and quantitative facets to it. In contrast, user testing is a common misnomer. We're never testing users. So just rip out this from your lexicon, okay? We never, ever want to use the term user testing. We don't test people. User researchers, UX researchers, experience researchers, design researchers, whatever you want to call it, test experiences. They test prototypes. They test products. They test services and content. They test other things too, but we never test people. So please, for the life of God, remove this term from your lexicon. In contrast, usertesting.com is an on-demand platform that facilitates different types of studies. These could be moderated studies or unmoderated studies. It allows us to run studies, record studies, edit studies, pull out highlight reels. It produces sentiment scores. They have a panel that we can recruit from, or we could upload our own panel of participants. You can run studies on mobile, on desktop, on tablets. It is a platform. It is software as a service. It is very expensive. So these are just an example of how our terms can be really, really confusing and why it's so important to truly understand them. So before I show you what a whole bunch of methods look like, let me tell you a little bit about some of the methods that you're going to see so you'll have a little bit of context. So I just went through what a usability study was. Ethnographies, in contrast, ethnographies are field studies where a researcher will immerse themselves into the context or the situation or the environment they're looking to learn about. If we're looking to understand how people in wheelchairs play golf, we might go to a golf course, right? If we're looking to understand how people in wheelchairs purchase golf clubs, maybe we'll go to a golf pro shop and speak to a golf pro, or maybe a pro that trains people in wheelchairs how to play golf. We're going to go there. We're going to immerse ourselves in this context, and we're going to do a couple of activities with them while we're there. Participatory design is where researchers and designers collaborate with either stakeholders or the end users to co-design solutions better. So we're doing it in partnership, and this is really, really helpful to make sure that we are designing with the end user top of mind, right? It also really helps to ensure buy-in into our process, and it's really, really effective when we're diving into highly complex or nuanced problem spaces. Diary studies are longitudinal studies where we collect information over a longer period of time, let's say 3 or 5 days or 2 weeks, okay? So we're collecting studies over a longer period of time because we can't necessarily understand the depth of what we're looking for in a 1 or 2 hour block. So a great example of this might be a diary study about the home buying process, right? You don't wake up, decide to buy a home and close a home within 24 hours. It's an elongated process. Another great use case here would be the 10-day free trial that someone might get when they purchase something, right? So maybe we want to track their ups and downs or their activities or how they feel and how they behave in those 10 days. Card sorts can be both qualitative or quantitative. Card sorts help us understand how the people we're designing for group things in ways that make sense to them. They really help us organize our thinking and are instrumental in creating something like an information architecture or different features or featured service levels, like the bronze level, the silver level, the gold level of some sort of product or service. Card sorts can be either qualitative or quantitative, and there's 3 types of card sorts. There's an open card sort, a closed card sort, and a hybrid card sort. We'll get into that a little bit later. Click testing, on the other hand, is a quantitative measure. It helps us collect information on where users would first click to accomplish a task. They're super helpful, again, to inform navigation, link structure, and other aspects, but they measure the accuracy of those clicks and the time it took those people to make that initial click. So it's focused on accuracy and time to task. Okay, a 5-second test is where we show something to someone, say the front page of, I don't know, a movie poster. It could be anything. Show it to them for 5 seconds, and then we take it away. And then we ask them some questions about what they just saw. Maybe we're asking them what the most important information was, or how they would describe it to a colleague, or whether or not they noticed this or that. Okay, but we're gathering their initial impressions based on a 5-second view. A/B tests are quantitative. They're focused specifically on conversion. A/B tests compare 2 things that are exactly the same, except for one small change. Maybe it's the call to action button color, or maybe it's the image or the photo, okay? They're used to test conversion. Surveys, lots of misinformation out here that surveys are easy to create and easy to distribute. This is due to the democratization of survey softwares like Google Forms and Typeforms. And yes, they do make them easy to create and to distribute for sure. But what they also have done is created a whole bunch of biased information. Writing a survey properly with correct survey questions, the right response types, enough escape hatches, and things like that is incredibly difficult. It is an art that takes years to really master well. I always caution people when I see surveys, first of all, 9 out of 10 surveys I see are incredibly flawed. They are introducing bias into the questions, into the response options, or the question types, or the solicitation. And what happens is that then we're collecting flawed data. And what happens after that is that the decisions we're making are based off of flawed data too. So they're not as easy as it seems. I created something called the UX Lex, which is an interactive, evolving glossary of UX terms with a full acronym decoder to explore the nuances of our terminology further. This is free, and I really encourage you to sign up for a weekly term. You get a term a week pushed out to you via email. It's totally free, and all of these terms come with reputable resources. These terms took years to create, and they have been very, very well vetted. So please take a look there if you're looking to improve your understanding of your terminology, which I suggest everybody does. All right, let's get into user research methods in action. I'm going to grab a sip of water first. Again, if there's any questions or thoughts about what I just shared with you in terms of the terminology or the lingo or anything about the specific research processes that I just discovered or covered, please throw that in the chat, and then we'll have some questions to dive into in the Q&A. Who had heard about a new method there or understood something new about a method that I just covered? That would be helpful to know too. All right. So user research methods in action. Let's dive into what it really, really looks like. So earlier I mentioned participatory design. Participatory design is the same as co-design. These are examples and imagery from a 4-day workshop in Bangkok that I led around co-designing toys. Now, Thailand is known as being great toy manufacturers, but they're not known as being great toy designers. So you'll remember co-design and participatory design is where researchers or designers collaborate with stakeholders or the people they are ultimately designing for, and we design together. This really increases buy-in, and it increases understanding and ensures that we are not designing in a vacuum. I love co-designing workshops, and really workshops of all types. This is an example of a paper prototype. Paper prototypes can be super helpful to generate a better understanding of needs and expectations. What you're looking at here is a very rough sketch of a real estate app. And I might gather feedback on this in some sort of generative study to generate a better understanding of what someone thinks might be going on in this portion of this screen or in that portion of the screen. This might help me understand a baseline. It's much easier for people to interpret a sketch like this and provide and articulate what they think is happening than it is when you put something pixel perfect in front of them. So we use paper prototypes to generate a better understanding. Paper prototypes can also be used internally. So what I'd like for you to look at here are the bottom portions of these sketches. In the top left and in the top middle, you'll see something on the bottom that says a consistent footer. And my idea here is this footer would contain information, and if you clicked that caret, it would flip down so that you would get more information in that footer, like legal information and things like that. In the top right and in the lower left, you'll see something that I'm referring to as a rotating footer. So I was trying to convey here to the engineers to find out, does any code snippet exist for this flip down footer or this rotating footer? Because I know enough about product design to know that if some code snippets exist, I could test it faster and we could roll it out more quickly. And I also don't necessarily want to introduce a net new behavior into a well-established system. So if this behavior exists elsewhere, it's going to be easier to adopt. All right. So these are examples from an ethnography. Now, as a reminder, an ethnography is where we're going into the field, we're going into context to really understand something. The ethnography is a primary qualitative research method, right? To understand why, to understand people and their culture. This is a study on the car insurance of the future. What we did here was conduct a study in 4 different regions with 3 different segments of people. The first segment of people had traditional cars. They lived in suburbia. They drove to the supermarket. They drove to school and to work and back. The second segment did not have a car, but they rented cars from places like Avis and Hertz on a frequent basis, say like once or twice a month. Maybe they have a summer house, or they live in a city and they go on sales calls once a week. The third group didn't have their own car, didn't rent from places like Avis and Hertz, but they did use car share services like Lyft or Uber or GetAround. So we're coming at this in a variety of different ways to understand how we might think about and what would be important to consider when it comes to developing the car insurance of the future. Now, when we conduct ethnographies, we build in activities to help us gather a deeper understanding. Oftentimes we'll ask them to draw something or to complete a task or an activity. What you see here are some of the drawings to the responses when I asked, how do you think car insurance works? Draw for me how you feel about car insurance, right? And you can see here, there is a large amount of frustration and tears. These certainly aren't happy pictures. They, label the executives as fat cats just counting money. And they went into detail to explain these very quick drawings. And this sort of emotion comes across and is really, really moving and relevant. So we develop activities and then create these artifacts to help bring these experiences to life. Now, I mentioned workshops earlier, and I love doing workshops. This is a workshop focused on a fictitious concept called automated payroll. And what we're doing here is some empathy mapping. Empathy mapping helps us understand 4 different quadrants of attitudes and behaviors. Those 4 quadrants are think, feel, say, and do. So what you see here are Post-it notes that correspond to very specific questions that relate to, in this instance, small business owners who process payroll, bookkeepers and accountants who process payroll for small business owners, around this fictitious concept called automated payroll. What do you think of when I mention a concept called automated payroll? How might this impact your business in a positive way? How might this impact your business in a negative way? How might this affect yada, yada? And you can see we go around and around in these 4 quadrants to get a 360-degree picture of an interpretation like that. This is a workshop for the redesign of a popular health care provider. And what you're looking at is a dot scale or a rating scale. This is basically the in-person version of a Likert scale. So we place a statement that has polar opposites at each end of an axis, and then we ask people to place a dot where they fall in terms of agreement. Then we use that to spur conversation to understand why. For this particular study, I conducted over maybe 175 studies for the redesign of this site. And we gathered feedback from 4 different segments of people. The first segment were healthy 25-year-olds that really only go to the doctor when something happens, right? Like they break an ankle. The second group were with healthcare proxies. So the healthcare proxy is someone that is assigned to a minor to manage that minor's healthcare, or that works with someone that may not be able to care for themselves. Think about someone who maybe has Parkinson's disease or something like that. The third were people that have chronic conditions. People that have chronic conditions have more doctors, take more pills, have a larger care team, and have more doctor's appointments. And the fourth segment were healthcare brokers, people who sold health insurance to individuals and to companies or organizations. So what you see here, again, we do workshops, but we're collecting the feedback from the people who are best suited to provide us with feedback. And we also don't want to exclude anyone. Inclusion and diversity is really important when we're developing these types of things. Here are some artifacts from another workshop focused on gathering feedback or focused on educating executives from a Japanese auto manufacturer about the importance of creativity and innovation in the workspace. And what we did here was we introduced the concept, and then we taught them how to conduct an ethnography. Then we sent them out into the field, into Bay Area companies that had super creative and innovative workspaces. They interviewed a designer there, went out to lunch with a designer there, and did a few activities to then bring back. We also incorporated a lot of role playing. We incorporated a lot of hands-on making. It was excellent. This is another way to generate a better understanding of how you might solve for a different set of problems. These are examples of journey maps. There is a huge misunderstanding and controversy about journey maps. Journey maps are not data generating methods. Journey maps are a visual representation of either assumed data that the team has already acquired or data that has been gathered by qualitative research. Journey maps do not gather data. They are a visual representation of either assumed data that has yet to be tested or the result of qualitative learnings. What you're looking at here is the same journey map rendered differently. Journey maps are visual representations, very important. And they're controversial because people have differing views on how they should be compiled. They don't often understand how they should be used and they should not be used and when. And they are not often updated and they should be. They're controversial for a number of reasons in addition to that, but I'll stop there for now. Stakeholder mapping is also commonly misunderstood. This is not a data generating method. Stakeholder maps are visual representations of either assumed data or data that has already been collected. The visual representations of stakeholder maps and journey maps allow us to digest the information in an easier way. I love developing Mad Libs. For those of you that are non-American, Mad Libs were a game that came out, I don't know, maybe 40, 50 years ago. And they're basically these funny stories that you fill in the blanks for. You can Google it. They have an online version now. This was an activity in that automated payroll concept workshop. And every single fill in the blank corresponds with either a think, a feel, a say, or do. So I reverse engineer every single blank so that I can extract all the thinks. I can extract all the feels. I can extract all the do's and so forth. You can also conduct these remotely via survey software, or in this instance, when I did the other segment I ran this for was European small business owners and bookkeepers and accountants. In that instance, I conducted it via Trello. All right, here's an example of a click test. These blotches that you see are called, these are the heat maps, right? This is where someone actually clicked when provided the task. So we'll provide them with a task. Now imagine you're visiting this healthcare site for the very first time. Where would you go to sign in? You'll see the image on the left has like 3 separate blotches, one on the hamburger menu, one on the logo, and one that says sign in to get care. All 3 are correct answers. That's great. We don't care how someone logs in per se, as long as they can log in quickly with one click, right? And they could do so easily. In the purple box, you could see what the report out looks like in terms of number of clicks and the average time to make that click. So again, click tests are quantitative measures that help us understand where someone would first click to accomplish a task and how accurate they were in that click. I also, in this particular study, there were 15 or 20 tasks, and I tested 3 concepts, the same 15 or 20 tasks in 3 concepts against each other. So I could not only understand accuracy and time per concept, I could then gauge accuracy and time per concept. And we used all of that data to inform how to progress. Card sorts. Card sorts, as I mentioned earlier, can either be qualitative or quantitative. We can have an open card sort, a closed card sort, or a hybrid card sort. What you see here on the left are typical expenses a company might have. And what you see on the right are categories to sort those into. Again, this is really helpful when we're looking to understand how the people we're designing for think about and categorize that type of information. Card sorts produce something called the dendrogram and a best merge method. They also produce something called a similarity matrix when you conduct them on a platform. You can also conduct card sorts in person with index cards, post-it notes, and so forth. A diary study can be conducted on a variety of panels. You can use survey software. You can use mobile platforms. This is a diary study that about a 10-day trial for a mileage tracking app. And we pushed out new questions every other day for the first 10 days. I'm sure you've all seen interactive prototypes. We test, this is a form of evaluative research, right? Because there is something here to evaluate. This is a lease creation software. There's different fidelities of prototypes that we test too. This is a mileage tracking software's dashboard. What we've done here is we are testing with the actual user's real data. So we've piped in their real data and they're interacting with it. Super high fidelity. We also test on web. We also test internal CRM systems. And remember that sketch of the real estate app, the paper prototype that I showed you in the beginning? This was actually taken from the super high fidelity ProtoPie prototypes. ProtoPie allows designers to create prototypes and gather feedback on gestures and taps that are not live. This is super, super advanced stuff. I created the sketch, the very, very loose sketch from the actual that you see right here. This is a prototype. And I gathered the needs and expectations from the people we were designing for first. Then I presented this actual prototype, and I was able to delve in between the similarities and the differences and to understand the mental models better. It also gave me a basis of criteria to inform what we may want to improve and what's working well and what's not. Oftentimes, we're combining both generative and evaluative research. We're not working in a vacuum. We're combining, say, qual and qual, quant and quant, qual and quant and qual, and so forth. Again, combining methods and choosing your methods will be informed by 4 different considerations. Where are you in the process? What are you looking to learn? How confident do you want to be, or does the team need to be? And how much time do you have? So I created this research tool to share with you today called How Do I Research? And this is like a cheat sheet to help you understand what type of research or what phase of research you're in right now, according to specific types of questions that often fall into that bucket. What a researcher would call this, most helpful approaches and approaches that are not helpful to answer those questions. So you'll find this in the downloads and the research. All right, I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. And if you could, please add something that inspired or surprised you about methods into the Q&A or the chat, and we'll go from there. I think there's a little bit of a lag. I'm seeing some questions and thumbs up. That's really helpful. Okay, this is the hands-on portion, and it's really fun. I'd like to take you through a few activities here, some analysis and synthesis activities. So first, what is analysis and synthesis? Well, simply put, it's the phase that where we make sense of the data that we've collected, and we need to make sense of it in order to summarize it, share it, and act upon what we studied and what we learned, right? So it's super important that once we conduct research, we spend time to let it noodle around, right? We need to feel it. We need to smell it. We need to touch it. We need to organize it in a different ways so that we can act on it, right? And oftentimes it's not just us that are acting on it as individuals, it's teams of people that need to act on it. So specifically, analysis is the process of breaking apart our notes, our data, our artifacts, our observation into very small pieces. I call these snippets of data. Synthesis is where we combine these pieces to create something from them. Maybe we combine them in themes. Maybe we combine them in frameworks. Maybe we combine them in priority order. Analysis and synthesis are closely intertwined, but context is always king. Okay, let's do a quick activity here. So how does analysis and synthesis work? Well, first, we base our thoughts off of what we think we know at any given time. And as we learn more, we gain more experiences, our thinking grows and changes. And this is what happens with a study, right? We base our initial thoughts, our assumptions and hypotheses off of what we know or think at the time. And then as we learn more, we gain more context and we gain more understanding. The binoculars metaphor is really useful here. So let's start with this image. Everybody get into the Q&A, and just very, very quickly, we're going to go very quickly here. Tell me, what do you think this photo is? What are we looking at here? What is the subject doing? Okay, what's happening here? So everybody go ahead and just put in your very, very initial thoughts. And I'm going to move to the next slide. So everybody add at least one thing in there. What do we think the photo is of? Who's the subject? What's happening in this photo? What is your initial thinking? And why do you think that? Okay, let's move on to the next image. See, that was only a portion of a bigger picture, right? So let's take a step back. What do you think is going on now? All right. How has your thinking changed about what is going on in this photo, who the subject is, and what they're thinking? Go ahead and put it in the Q&A or the chat. Okay. Has your thinking changed? Why or why not? And yeah, go ahead and put it. Great. And then we're going to go to the last image, which is going to reveal a whole bunch more context. Okay. Awesome. Great. Now, that was only a smaller portion of the bigger picture yet again. And look what happens when we take an even further step back. What do you think is going on now? Right? How has your thinking changed? And what new perspectives do you have on the situation now? See, we put everything together we've learned through a series of interactions and deeper understanding. We make inferences to gain a better understanding of what's happening in the data we collect. And what just happened there was you collected more and more data. As we continue to come through the data, we synthesize and make sense with it, and our thoughts morph as we spend more and more time with the data. And this is what analysis and synthesis is. We employ various analyzing and synthesizing frameworks to this. I teach this in my class called Spot Patterns. And what I'd like to share with you next is another framework for analysis and synthesis. So let's think of concentric circles, okay? Synthesis can also be conceived as ripples by throwing a rock in a pond. The inner circle is our initial thinking. And as we gather more information, our thinking expands and grows bigger, like ripples in a pond. All right, so let's do another quick activity. If someone, I see that more participants have joined, so if someone could put the link to the resources again in the chat and the Q&A, that would be really helpful. And let's do another quick activity. So take a piece of scrap paper and let's just draw the circles, 1, 2, 3, 4 circles inside of each other. So you can follow along or do it in, you can do it online too. It doesn't have to be drawing. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal a few situations to you, a few things about myself. And what I'd like for you to do first is in that very, very innermost circle, jot down a few notes about me, maybe what I do for a living or what you assume about how I spend my time, basic info, right? And assumptions. And I fully assume you do not know too much about me, and that is the point. Okay, so in that very inner circle, write down a few notes or phrases about me, basic info and assumptions that you assume just from our short interaction together today. I'll give you about 20 more seconds to do that. Again, we're just looking for 3 or 4 things. Now I'm going to tell you about my early morning routine today. And I'd like for you to make a few more notes about me in the blue circle. So I woke up at around 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, and I read in bed for a while. And then I started the coffee maker, and then I jumped in the shower, and I came out, I got dressed, had my coffee and a little bit of breakfast. And I reviewed my calendar for the day, and I reviewed the events and meetings that I had planned for today. Make a few more notes in that blue section about me and new information that you just acquired there. And let's go into the green circle now. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the rest of my morning and the remainder of my day-to-day, right? And write what new information you're learning about me in the lime green circle. So after I reviewed my calendar, I woke up my 7-year-old daughter for school, and I helped her get dressed and fed. And then we did her hair in pigtails, brushed teeth, and I drove her to school. I dropped her off at school, and then I drove home, and I had a call with my developer this morning. So that's a little bit more information about my morning. For the rest of the day today, I'm going to be working on a consulting research project for a consulting client. And I have calls with 3 prospective students here and there. So write down a little bit more about me based on what information I just shared with you. And then in the 4th circle, I'm going to tell you about my weekend and my summer plans. And note that in the purple circle. Well, first, tonight, we're having a family dinner. I'm sorry, we're not having family dinner tonight. I just looked at my calendar. It's Friday night. Saturday morning, I have to run errands. I have to go to bed and bath. My soda stream broke again. So I want to replace that. I drink soda stream carbonated water all the time. No flavoring, by the way, just straight up. And then Saturday afternoon, I'm going to take my daughter and a friend swimming. And this summer, we're going to travel to see friends and family in Colorado, Montana, and Idaho. So what you see there, again, go ahead, just make a few more notes in the purple circle. And take a step back, because the basic info and assumptions you initially had have now exponentially increased. This is the exact same process we go through when we gather more information and research. Our thinking expands and grows bigger, like the ripples in a pond. And thinking in that framework is another approach to analysis and synthesis. We also have thematic analysis, we have affinity mapping, we have multiple frameworks, and so forth. So let's move into our last activity, which is going to be a super fast group pattern recognition activity. All right, so I'm going to quickly show you a series of 6 images for about 30 seconds each. And what I'd like for you to do is look for the patterns that you see. Look for similarities. Similarities might be just 1 or 2 things that are common, right? They don't have to show up in all 6 images. So very quickly, what sort of patterns do you see? What sort of similarities do you see? Or themes do you see in the 6 images that I'm showing you here? Right, go ahead and add those to the chat or to the Q&A, and I'm going to flip to the next one really quickly. There's no right or wrong, just the first things that come to your mind, first themes, first images that come to your mind here. Okay, and here's another one. 6 seemingly disparate images, but what themes come to mind? What's similar or different in at least 2 of the 6 of these images? Is it an attitude? Is it a behavior? Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it spiritual? I'm going to go ahead and change the slide. Everyone bang out a couple. Again, there's no right or wrong. We're looking for something that's similar in at least 2 of the 6 images. We'll move on to the next. What's similar in at least 2 of these images? Is there anything collective, any feeling, any theme, any emotion, any behavior in these 6 images? Go ahead and put those into the chat. I'm not sure that we're going to have time to discuss these and do a Q&A, but when we're done, I'm happy to stay, later and share the themes with you. But it's also really helpful to look at the others. All right, let's get ready for the last one. If you haven't provided a theme or a similarity or something in these images, go ahead and do so now. And this is the last one. These are the final 6 images. And we're looking for some sort of themes or similarities that show up in at least 2 of the images. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that analysis and synthesis happens in a variety of different ways. And there are a variety of different formats and approaches. We can do this both with literal data. We can do this with video or visual data. We can also do this with audible data, right? Many, many different approaches. Okay. 20 more seconds, write down 1 theme, 2 themes that are showing up for you that make any 2 or more of these seemingly disparate images connect. Simply put, humans are the best pattern recognition machines in the world. There's many, many different approaches to analysis and synthesis. And we learn about it in my courses too. So last but not least, I've compiled a bunch of free user research resources and discounts for you today and all of the conference attendees. You'll find it in the link that was shared earlier in the chat. If someone could reshare that, that'd be great. The image on the left is my favorite frameworks tool. This will provide you with a whole bunch of different frameworks to help you think through how to analyze and synthesize. I've also included my How Do I Research tool, an acronym decoder from the UX Lex, links to dozens of podcasts, webinars, and other things, including 5 episodes of me with Debbie and Delta CX, and a 25% off coupon for my classes at General Assembly, and a Delta CX discount coupon for my Curiosity Tank classes, as well as other frameworks to help you think in different ways about analysis and synthesis. And I'm also super active on LinkedIn, so I hope you will join me there. Please reach out to connect. Let me know that you're part of this conference today. And I look forward to connecting with you. You'll find much more information in the links, as well as newsletter detail and things like that. And thank you so much. I'm happy we got off to a little bit of a late start, so I am more than happy to answer any questions anybody else might have.
Phenomenal presentation, Michele. That's absolutely awesome. I'm actually preparing to share that UX lexicon out on social media as we speak, but I'll wait for us to finish. We'll finish out the Q&A first. A lot of questions have come in. Willing to stay as long as anybody else is willing to stay, if you're willing to stay, Michele.
Absolutely.
A lot of stuff here. So there was upvoting. So for folks who may have missed that in the chat, if you go to the Q&A, you can actually vote for questions that you would like to be prioritized higher in the queue. But for now, I'm going to start with the top question. And it's from Aditya, who asks, what are some tests you believe are underused and would recommend people become more familiar with?
I don't know if underused is that wasn't the first thing that came to my mind, but I certainly always recommend people learn how to build their interviewing skills. before they master or try to immerse themselves into any other platform or methodology. Once you learn how to ask great questions and you can confidently and consistently gather feedback in live environments from living, breathing people and have those improv skills, you will have the foundation to choose the best platforms and the best methods to solve the question at hand. If you focus on a method, like say, building your survey skills or mastering a platform like usertesting.com, you will always default to what you learn first. It's just human nature. And the chances are slim to none that what you learn first is going to be the best approach to solve the question at hand.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I love that, what you mentioned about improv. It's grossly underrated, and we need to learn how to think on our toes. I always talk about having our head on a swivel, and that's where that improv mindset comes into play. Awesome. Awesome. Second one is from Shalene, and she asks, when and how is diary study used? And is diary study reliable, as users might not enter exact and I'll say complete information?
Well, users may never enter the correct or complete information. So I don't think that question is specific to diary studies. To shore up that concern, which I think is a very valid concern. I'm sorry, I forgot to stop sharing there. To address that concern, this is why we want to discuss the importance of our confidence level up front when we're doing our plan, right? So we want to understand what level of confidence are we looking for. And then this will help us determine how many segments of people we want to speak with, how many, which methods we will employ, and how many cycles or phases of research can we accomplish.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Next one is from Colleen, and she asks, what is the value of the 5-second test?
The value of the 5-second test is to gauge initial impressions on something. So perhaps we want to redesign our landing page, or perhaps we want to understand hierarchy of importance in terms of messaging, or perhaps we just want to get like a spot check on whether or not something is on brand, or whether the language is clear or intuitive. So it's primarily to gather our initial impressions.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Next, we're going through these pretty good pace here. Anita is asking, there's a lot of discussion around design thinking and how UX practitioners lose out when seeking to evangelize UX and have everyone participate. Can you please distinguish between that and a proper participatory design process?
So design thinking is an approach. Participatory design is a data generating method. So I think we're comparing apples to oranges a little bit. Participatory design is where we are getting hands-on with either the stakeholders who we truly need to be invested in the solution, or with the people that will ultimately wind up using the product or service that we are developing. And it usually includes a series of activities that are very well defined and aligned towards a very specific goal. So some examples might be, our goal today is to leave here understanding the primary needs of the new, I'm looking at my cell phone, of the new cell phone charger pack. So in addition, we want to understand different use cases in which somebody might purchase this. And we want to leave with a prioritized set of questions we need to explore and a storyboard of what this experience might look like for the top 3 use cases. So it would be very defined and specific.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. Cool. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Shalene, and she's asking, what's your take on paper prototyping usability testing? I think she's getting using paper prototypes during usability testing.
So it would be great to gather perhaps a smoke signal, but because there's nothing, can you clarify that question? Is this an interactive paper prototype or is this a static paper prototype? And my answer would depend, because the information that you would be able to gather would be dependent on the fidelity of this paper prototype. So how easy is this to use might not be a question that we would really be able to understand from a paper prototype, because they can't actually interact with it. If they could interact with it, then maybe we'll be able to get some smoke signals on what's working well and what's not, or what needs to be clarified. But it really depends on, those 2 core questions. What are you looking to learn, and how will the learnings be applied?
Okay. And I love the distinction you make there, because I think a lot of us we draw the conclusion that a paper prototype is a sketch as opposed to something that was done digitally and then printed out. It still makes it a paper prototype. So glad to hear that distinction there. Anita is asking, what is the purpose of coming up with hypotheses in the first place, as opposed to jumping in with generative research to figure out the landscape of the problem?
Oh, that's a great question. The purpose of generating hypotheses or assumptions to test is like tenfold, in no particular order. It helps the team get on the same page in terms of what we're looking to learn and how we're going to approach that learning. So what we want to do is identify some sort of assumptions or hypotheses from which to test. User research is a process of gathering evidence-based information in order for us to make more informed decisions. The evidence that we're collecting needs to relate to something very specific, and using an assumption or a hypothesis helps us frame what we're looking for and provide some structure to that. It also is really, really helpful and important in terms of aligning the team on, again, what we're looking to learn and how the learnings will be applied.
Okay, awesome. And 2 more. Thank you for staying overtime, and thank everybody else for being here. There's 2 more. I think this will be pretty straightforward. Kia is asking, how do you do a click test? Is there a site or a company that you recommend?
Yeah, you could do a click test on usabilityhub.com. You could do a click test on optimalworkshop.com. Basically, it's these are unmoderated studies, and you those are 2 platforms, and you upload what you're looking to test. Maybe they're static PDFs or things like that. And then you mark the accurate areas, so if someone clicks within like this amount of space over here, deem that a correct answer. And then you program your tasks, right? So where would you go to sign in to get care? So that in that example, there were 3 correct answers. So I would highlight all 3 areas, and then the system would calculate on the back end how many people clicked where they actually clicked, whether it was accurate or not, and the time it would take them to click there. In these tools, also, you're going to want to make sure that you're screening in the right people and screening out the wrong people. So you're gathering feedback from the people who are best suited to provide you with information about the topic that you're learning about. So both of these platforms have panels also, but you can upload your own panel if you have a specialty recruit as well.
Okay. Okay, and the last question from Luciano. How would you suggest introducing UX in a fast-paced environment that does not consider it?
I have an excellent activity called my Giraffe Origami study. And it's a 7-minute activity where I have directions for how to make a giraffe origami. And I organize the class or the audience into two or more groups where you have a maker and then you have observers. And the maker has to try to make the actual origami from the direction. And it is very, very difficult to do so because the directions are not very good, even though they are from the internet, right? Even though they are real. And then we go through a very quick dialogue about what just happened. What did we hear and what did we observe? Observing and listening are the two ways that we gather information. And then I very quickly, within 7 minutes, can demonstrate the power of user research and how it doesn't have to be always incredibly expensive or take a lot of time. So I like to show them to answer your question, find a quick win and get that under my belt first.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Love that strategy. Okay. We got through all the questions. So thank you, Michele, for that extra time today. Thank all of you for taking the time to be with us on today. I hope that you got a lot out of the talk. I hope you got a lot out of the conference. And so we are done. All right, let's go get to it. All right, everybody.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Everybody have a good one.